Welcome back to hopefully the last of the videos for chapter 20 on hypotheses tests for proportions. The last video that we had on part 3 was we ended off with this problem. And I wanted to go through the whole process that I'm expecting for y'all to do to answer it. And again, I'm going to go through that 5-part process or 5-step process that I explained earlier. So here's the problem. Company is willing to renew its advertising contract with a local radio station, only if the station can prove that more than 20% of the residents of the city have heard the ad and recognize the company's product. The radio station conducts a random sample of 400 people and finds that 90 of them have heard the ad and recognize the product. Is this sufficient evidence for the company to renew its contract? So that's the situation that we're dealing with. Excuse me. So, step 1, parameter and state it. And we also need to go through your hypotheses. So, the first part, P is the true proportion of people who heard the ad. Our hypotheses, our null hypothesis is 20%. And again, that came right from the problem. That's P is equal to 20%. And again, it wanted to know a greater than 20%, and that's what we're looking for to see if there's more than 20% have heard it. And that's what they want, the radio station wants. So that's why we have a greater than for our alternative hypothesis. So let's go through our assumptions. It's stated that it is random, so the sample is random. We are given that n is 400 and p is 20%, so we have 80 for our NP, which is greater than 10, and we have 400 times 80, there's our 80%, again that's Q, 1 minus 0.2, and that definitely is greater than 10, so 320 is definitely greater than 10. So we do have a large enough sample. Likewise, likewise, and make sure we use the parameter of the null hypothesis to check these assumptions. All right, so part 3, your sample must be less than 10% of the entire population, and this is again an assumption that there's at least 400 people that listen and do the radio station thing. So the population should be at least 4,000. Again, where did I get this? I multiplied n times my 10% to give us this value, in which we're going to check to make sure that the sample size, the sample must be less than this. And it is. Well, let's hopefully assume that it is. All right, so since our assumptions and conditions are met, we are allowed to do a z-test for proportions, and it's appropriate for us to do that. So, part 1, part 2, part 3 are done. Let's go on. Next is your calculations. So let's find that p-value. We are given that mu of p, which is our p-value, our parameter, is 20%. Our p-hat value, again, we are given some data. We know 90 of them actually heard and understood what it was talking about out of the total. So 90 divided by 400 gives us this value. And that again is your statistic that we are using. Our standard deviation of p is pq divided by n, where p is 20% and q is 80%. And we are given, when we do this out, we get our value of our level of significance is 5. So we're going to have to figure this out in just a bit. So again, I'm going to talk to you about where these numbers come from. So draw a picture. Here's what our picture looks like. Again, we have our mean, and here's our p-hat value. And this is, again, what we're looking for. And again, they were greater than, according to the context of the problem. So We substitute into our z-test, and we get 0.225 minus 0.2 divided by that standard deviation that we talked about here. And we get a z-value of, or a z-test value of 1.25. Now, using our z-chart, you can look up 1.25. So again, you go down the column of 1.2 and scroll over to the 0.05, and we get this value. No, I lie. We don't get that value. We get its complement. Now, why do we get the complement of this? Let's see. Is this greater than? That's why. So we have to make sure that because this is the greater than, the z-score chart deals with less than, we have to find this complement. So the number that we're given is like let's see, what was it again? 89 something, 88 and change. I lose it here. I don't have it in front of me. But anyway, 1 minus that value gets us our p-value. Now we need to take a look at making our decision. Here's our p-value. Our p-value and our alpha. This gives us this value. We're checking it. This is 10%, this is 5%. Therefore, we go on to our decision making. The decision that we should make, since p is greater than alpha, is fail to reject your null hypothesis at 5% level. So therefore, there is not enough evidence to conclude that the true proportion of people who heard the ad is greater than 20%. So again, hopefully you see the whole process when you're going through your z-test. The z-test tells us our p-value. You check it with the 5%. If that p-value gives us a number that's less than 5%, then we would reject the null hypothesis at the 5% level. And there is enough evidence to conclude that the true proportion of people who heard the ad is greater than 20%. So I hope you see the difference between that. The wording is just slightly off or slightly different if you have you fail to reject versus reject. So hopefully that makes sense to you. And again, we'll do more problems in this in next week when we go by and finish off our unit. Thank you.